Sometimes betrayal doesn't start in a hotel room, it starts in a conversation, a glance that lasts too long, a text that feels too friendly, a heart that starts to drift, even when the body hasn't moved. And yet, the truth is women often cheat differently. It's quieter, more emotional, and far harder to detect. Today, we're not here to point fingers. We're here to understand the why, the how, and the what it reveals about human connection, desire, and unmet needs. Because behind every act of deception, there's a story that wasn't told, a feeling that wasn't met, and a version of ourselves we couldn't face. It rarely begins with cheating. It begins with silence, with that quiet space between two people that keeps getting wider, conversation by conversation. One day, she stops sharing what's really on her mind. She laughs a little less at his jokes. She scrolls through her phone a little longer, not because there's someone else, but because it feels safer than being unseen again. Emotional withdrawal isn't a decision, it's a slow fading of warmth, the gradual loss of connection that once felt effortless. Imagine two people sitting at dinner. The food is good, the setting is nice, but the air feels heavy. She's right there, but she's not. He asks how her day was, and she says, fine. But behind that fine are hundreds of unspoken thoughts, disappointments, unmet needs, feelings she no longer believes will be understood. So she stops trying. And that's the real beginning of betrayal, not against her partner, but against her own emotional truth. People cheat emotionally long before they cheat physically. They start investing their energy elsewhere, maybe in work, maybe in a friend who listens, maybe in the fantasy of what being understood would feel like. It's not about lust, it's about attention. Someone notices the small things her partner forgot. Someone asks the right questions. Someone makes her feel seen again. And suddenly, the emotional withdrawal deepens. She becomes distant not because she hates him, but because she's slowly learning to live without being emotionally fed. It's easy to judge from the outside, but if you've ever been in a relationship where you felt invisible, you know how dangerous that quiet can be. When communication dies, imagination replaces it. When we stop talking, our minds fill in the silence with stories, stories that justify why we pull away, why we stop caring, why we let go. Every relationship breaks first in the mind. Before the body ever strays, the heart has already left the room. The real lesson here is awareness. Because if you can notice when connection starts fading, when your partner stops reaching out, when the laughter turns forced, when the texts feel like duty, you have a chance to repair it before the silence becomes betrayal. Every fine hides a storm. Every quiet dinner could be a warning or a wake-up call. The choice is in whether we listen before it's too late. The mind is a powerful storyteller. When a woman crosses a line she once swore she never would, her first instinct isn't always guilt, it's justification. She starts to tell herself a story that makes it make sense. Maybe she says, I wouldn't have done this if he still cared, or I deserve to feel wanted. These stories are not lies. They're emotional shields, fragile attempts to protect herself from the pain of her own contradictions. Because no one wakes up and says, today I will betray. It happens when she's already been betrayed by silence, by neglect, by her own unmet needs. Think of it like this. Imagine a woman who has spent years giving time, energy, emotion. She listens, supports, carries the weight of everything, but slowly feels unseen. She starts to fade behind the version of herself everyone expects her to be. Then one day, someone sees her differently. Not as a wife, not as a mother, not as a role, but as a woman. And in that moment, she feels alive again. The mind whispers, it's not wrong to want this, it's human. That's how justification begins. It's not evil, it's emotional survival. The psychology of justification works like a mirror. It reflects what we're unwilling to confront. She convinces herself she's not the one breaking something, but reclaiming something that was taken from her. She tells herself she's not being unfaithful, she's being understood. The mind twists discomfort into reason, guilt into self-defense. And in doing so, she starts to believe the story she's telling. It's the same pattern we use in everyday life. When we hurt someone we love, we say, I didn't mean it, I was stressed. When we procrastinate, we say, I'll start tomorrow. It's the mind's way of protecting our self-image, of staying the hero in our own story. because admitting we've crossed a line feels like tearing down who we thought we were. But here's what's powerful. These justifications reveal what people are truly starving for. They show the unmet emotional needs we've been suppressing, the craving for validation, connection, appreciation. It's not about the act, it's about the ache underneath it. The need to feel worthy, seen, desired, alive. And until we learn to face that ache with honesty, we keep building stories to make our pain look like purpose. The art of concealment isn't just about hiding actions, it's about hiding emotions. People think cheating is all about sneaking around, deleting messages, or lying with a straight face. But the real concealment starts much earlier, inside the mind. When a woman begins to detach, she learns to wear calm like armor. She still laughs, still shows up, still says the right words. But behind every smile is calculation. Not because she's cruel, but because she's trying to manage two worlds, the one she lives in and the one she secretly escapes to. It's fascinating how subtle the shifts are. She doesn't stop caring overnight. She just starts controlling what she shows. She'll still ask, "How was your day?" But she no longer waits for the answer. She'll still hold a conversation, but the warmth in her eyes will fade just a little. Most people never notice. And that's the brilliance and the tragedy of emotional concealment. It's not loud, it's quiet, not chaotic, but composed. The silence doesn't scream, it whispers. Imagine this. She's sitting next to her partner, scrolling through her phone, and there's a text she shouldn't reply to, but her face doesn't change. She's mastered the art of stillness. No guilt, no rush, just calm. Because by now, she's learned how to separate her worlds. It's not about lying, it's about surviving. Because maybe in her mind, she believes, if I tell the truth, I'll lose everything. If I hide it, at least I can keep something. And this isn't just about relationships, it's human nature. People hide their pain all the time. The woman who smiles at work but cries in her car. The man who jokes at dinner but feels empty inside. Concealment is protection. It's how we maintain balance when truth feels too heavy. We convince ourselves that if we control the surface, no one will notice the storm underneath. The mind is clever. It can create distance without moving an inch. It can hide guilt behind routine. It can make betrayal look like normalcy. And what makes it mind-blowing is that concealment doesn't always mean dishonesty. It sometimes means fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of losing what's left. People conceal not just to deceive others, but to protect themselves from facing the truth they're not ready to live with yet. Every person carries an invisible hunger, a craving that words can't quite explain. For some, it's the desire to be seen beyond their roles. For others, it's the need to feel alive again after years of routine. When a woman steps outside a relationship, it's rarely about adventure. It's about absence. The absence of being understood, of being admired, of being chosen again, not out of habit, but out of desire. Sometimes she's not chasing someone new, she's chasing a version of herself she's lost along the way. Imagine her sitting in a quiet room after another argument that ended in silence. She looks at her reflection and barely recognizes the woman staring back. Once, she was full of laughter and fire. Now she's tired, invisible, running on autopilot. Then one day someone says, "You look beautiful when you talk about what you love." And suddenly, something inside her wakes up. It's not about that person. It's about the feeling she forgot she could feel. It's not temptation, it's remembrance. People assume cheating is always about passion, but often it's about validation. To feel like you still matter. To know your voice still has power. To feel that someone notices the little things, your new perfume, your tone, your silence. Because when validation disappears, the heart starts searching for it elsewhere. Not out of evil, but out of emptiness. And then there's freedom, the kind that doesn't come from breaking rules, but from escaping the invisible cage of expectations. When a woman feels trapped, by routine, by criticism, by emotional neglect, freedom becomes intoxicating. She's not running from love, she's running from confinement. And in that chase, she mistakes rebellion for healing. Connection, though, is the deepest craving of all, the kind that doesn't need grand gestures, just presence. Someone who listens without fixing, understands without judging. When she finds that connection elsewhere, it's not because she wanted to destroy what she had. It's because She couldn't breathe inside what it became. In the end, the unspoken craving is not for another person. It's for aliveness, to feel seen, valued, and emotionally awake again, to return to that space where love feels like energy, not obligation. Because when connection fades, people don't always leave, they just start looking for themselves in someone else's eyes. The cost of silence is heavier than any argument. People think silence keeps the peace, but it only hides the war. When two people stop talking, they don't stop feeling, they just stop sharing. Every unsaid word becomes a brick, and slowly a wall rises between them. At first it's invisible, but over time it turns into distance, and that distance turns into misunderstanding. Silence doesn't protect love, it starves it. Imagine a couple sitting in the same room, each scrolling on their phones, pretending everything is fine. They used to talk about dreams, about what scared them, about what made them laugh. Now they talk about bills, groceries, schedules. The connection that once felt electric now feels muted. She wants to say, "I miss us," but swallows the words because she's tired of being the only one trying. He wants to say, "I don't know what's wrong," but fears it will start another fight. So they both stay quiet, hoping peace will return on its own. It doesn't. Silence has a way of eating love from the inside out. In daily life, we avoid hard conversations all the time. We say, "It's nothing," when it's everything. We smile to keep the peace, but end up losing ourselves. And that's how distance begins, one unspoken truth at a time. Silence feels safe, but it's only safe for the moment. Later, it becomes poison. It turns affection into assumption, and assumption into resentment. The real danger of silence is that it gives space for imagination. When there are no words, the mind starts filling in the gaps. She assumes he doesn't care. He assumes she's ungrateful. And both end up building stories that aren't even true. Communication could have fixed it, but silence made it worse. The cost of silence shows up when two people sleep beside each other but feel miles apart. When "good morning" becomes routine instead of warmth. When "I'm fine" becomes the cover for loneliness. We think avoiding pain keeps us safe, but it actually deepens the wound. Because when people stop expressing, they start disconnecting. And the moment you stop being honest, you stop being known. Silence may look peaceful from the outside, but inside, it's the slow death of connection, the quiet erosion of love, the invisible gap that turns partners into strangers. At some point, every story about love becomes a story about truth. Not the truth we speak, but the truth we hide. Behind every secret, every silence, every emotional withdrawal, there is a person who was once trying to love, trying to be loved, and somehow got lost in between. People don't cheat because they wake up one morning and decide to destroy everything they've built. They cheat because something inside them broke quietly and no one noticed. And maybe that's what hurts the most. Not the betrayal itself, but the moment you realize how long it had been happening in silence. Life has a way of teaching us that connection isn't built on perfection, it's built on awareness. You can't fix what you refuse to face. You can't heal what you pretend doesn't hurt. And you can't build intimacy when both people are wearing emotional armor. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do in love isn't to stay or to leave, but to speak, to say, "This is what's hurting me," before the silence becomes permanent. Relationships die quietly, not with screaming, not with fights, but with phrases like, "Oots, fine," "I'm busy," "We'll talk later." And when later never comes, love fades, trust fades, connection fades. But awareness can change everything. Because when you finally see the pattern, when you finally understand the why behind the pain, you begin to grow. And that growth is what transforms betrayal into wisdom, loss into learning, and heartbreak into rebirth. Every person watching this right now has felt the ache of being unseen. Maybe you stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Maybe you smiled when your heart was breaking. Maybe you carried a story no one knew. But here's what's powerful. Pain can become your turning point. Silence can become your teacher. The same experience that once shattered you can become the foundation of your strength. Sometimes it's not the love that saves you, it's the lesson that comes after losing it. There's a moment in every person's life when you realize that not everyone who comes into your world is meant to stay, but everyone is meant to teach you something. Some people teach you how to love, others teach you how not to be treated, and a few remind you of the strength you forgot you had. Don't let betrayal make you bitter. Let it make you aware. Don't let silence make you cold. Let it make you wiser. You see, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to see the story without letting it define you. It means looking back at the pain and saying, "That didn't destroy me, it transformed me." Every scar you carry is proof that you faced something that could have broken you, but didn't. You survived the silence, the doubt, the distance. And that survival is your power. If there's one thing to take from this, it's that love without honesty will always collapse. Emotional intimacy without communication will always fade. The truth will always surface, whether in words, in silence, or in distance. So be brave enough to have the hard conversations. Be vulnerable enough to show your real self, because connection doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. Remember this? Sometimes the person who hurt you wasn't evil, they were just unaware. Sometimes the person who cheated wasn't heartless, they were empty. And sometimes the one who stayed silent wasn't indifferent, they were afraid. Understanding doesn't excuse, but it does free you. And freedom, real freedom, begins when you stop waiting for someone else to heal the wounds they caused and start healing them yourself. You owe it to yourself to grow from the pain, not live in it. You owe it to your future to learn from the patterns that once broke you. And you owe it to love again, better, deeper, wiser. Because love isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about transforming through them. And when you finally do that, you'll realize something extraordinary. The most powerful thing you can ever do isn't to catch someone's lie, it's to tell yourself the truth.